Indonesia, the fourth most populous country in the world, a nation with the world's largest Muslim population. The third largest democracy in the world. A country made up of more than 17,000 islands, Indonesia is also home to hundreds of ethnic groups. Although some 87% of the Indonesian population is Muslim, the number of adherents of other religions is significant. Non-Muslims have long played a prominent role in Indonesian politics, the professions, and cultural life. In Indonesia, Islam is not opposed to nationalism and democracy. The inclusive and multi-religious national ideology, known as Pancasila, is accepted by a great majority of Muslims as well as other Indonesians. However, in recent years, this established and inclusive national ideology has faced growing challenges as a result of an Indonesian variety of identity politics. December 2, 2016, hundreds of thousands of Muslims crowded the Monas National Monument area in central Jakarta. They came not only from Jakarta but also from many other regions. Cries of Allahu Akbar or Allah is great are followed by fierce denunciations of the Christian Chinese governor of Jakarta, Basuki Cahayapurnama, also known as Ahok. Condemnation of Ahok is also expressed in posters and banners brought by the many protesters. Ahok was accused of insulting Muslims during his speech in the Thousand Islands region off the north coast of Jakarta. Demonstrators demanded that Ahok be tried and convicted on grounds of having committed blasphemy against Islam. The leader of the 212 Defend Islam movement was Habib Rizik, the imam or spiritual leader of Indonesia's largest Islamist militia, the Islamic Defender Front, FPI. Also in the leadership was Bahtiar Nasir, a prominent Islamic educator and activist, who created the national movement to guard Indonesian Ulema Council's fatwa, or GNPF-MUI. This massive 212 action was seen as greatly strengthening the movement for Islamic supremacy rather than citizen equality in Indonesia.
Allah sayang sama kita. Semuanya akan kemudian dihitung oleh Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Fa innallaha syari'ul hisab.
Some 2 years after the original 212 action, the movement promoting the supremacy of Islamic identity has continued to gain momentum. In November 2018, tens of thousands of young people attended the Hijrah Festival in Jakarta. Visitors to the Hijrah Festival came from diverse organizational and political backgrounds. The event was marked by strong expressions of Islamic identity and speeches promoting the narrative of Muslim supremacy rather than multi-religious citizenship in Indonesia.
Faktanya kita lihat, apakah kehidupan sekarang lebih baik? Apakah ketika diatur oleh selain sistem Islam Indonesia menjadi negara maju? Tidak. Jangan-jangan memang karena sistemnya. Berarti apa? Ayo kita rubah. Menjadi apa? Menjadi negeri yang merindukan tegaknya sistem Islam secara kafah.
After its success in Jakarta, a similar event was held 3 months later in the East Java city of Surabaya. The Hijrah Fest and Islamic Fest have become a meeting point for market and pop cultural products, conveying and celebrating the notion of Islamic revival. The 212 action has heightened the awareness that the Islamic revival is taking place not just in the political sphere, but in the economy and society as well, and sometimes taking an exclusive form. Outlets and stores highlighting Islamic identity have begun to appear, such as Halal Mart and 212 Mart. And with this development, the dichotomy between Muslim or native business versus foreign or infidel business has grown. The Islamic Revival campaign grows by making use of issues of injustice and economic inequality.
All of them will be available very soon. Now, on this meeting, we need
A lecturer at the University of Indonesia, Inayah Rahmani, carried out research on what motivates participants in the 212 action. She found that many protesters are not just motivated by matters of religious politics.
Ya, artinya secara alamiah orang kelas menengah itu akan mulai merasa gamang karena kesempatan di masa depan sulit untuk dia kontrol dan peran negara semakin lemah. Perasaan gamang itu keluar dalam narasi-narasi keagamaan. Ketika orang itu merasa cemas, merasa gamang, ada kecenderungan di antara kelas menengah Muslim di Indonesia, di dalam kasus ini DKI Jakarta, untuk kembali ke agama untuk mendapatkan sebuah kepastian. Sehingga ketika ada situasi politik tekanan tinggi, di mana ada musuh bersama yang menunjukkan sosok yang bukan Muslim, bukan dari ras Melayu, menimbulkan persepsi bahwa seseorang yang merupakan musuh kita akan mengambil pegangan kita, yang akan menambah ketidakpastian lagi.
What Inayah is referring to as a common enemy in 2016 was Ahok, the once popular governor of Jakarta at the time of the 212 Defend Islam mobilizations. Ahok is an Indonesian of ethnic Chinese descent and a non-Muslim. The issue of religious blasphemy in the case of Ahok has gained momentum and developed into a much broader campaign to reject non-Muslim leaders and foreign businesses. A basis of argument, the 212 action leaders refer to their reading of the Quran Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 51. Many Muslim scholars interpret the verse as not implying rejection of non-Muslim political leaders for all periods and places, but only at a particular period of social conflict in Medina during the life of the Prophet Muhammad. However, for some groups, Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 51 is interpreted and used as a symbol and legitimacy of the aspiration for Islamic supremacy in Indonesia today. The main figures promulgating this narrative is Bahtiar Nasir. He was one of the leading figures behind the 212 action and has not let up in his campaign, even after successfully ousting Ahok in 2017. In a speech presented at the Joko Karian Mosque in Yogyakarta in February 2019, Bahtiar Nasir again emphasized the Indonesian Muslim community's significant and special contributions to Indonesia. For this reason, he said Indonesian Muslims today deserve a special place in the country's political leadership.
Dalam Islam itu untuk apa sih? Kemana arah politik Islam sesungguhnya? Arah politik Islam tentunya untuk merealisasikan janji Allah yang 3 kepada kita semua. Pertama apa? La yastakhlifannahum fil ard. Akan diberikan
Islam adalah yang paling besar kontribusinya dalam proses lahirnya Negara Kesatuan Republik Indonesia ini. Sebagaimana kita ketahui, kerajaan-kerajaan Islam bukan cuma menyerahkan aset yang mereka miliki, tetapi ya kekuasaannya bersatu untuk Indonesia melawan invasi, serangan dunia atau kolonialisme Barat pada saat itu. Sampai pada akhirnya tokoh-tokoh Islam pula yang menjadi founding father berdirinya negeri ini. Tidak bisa dipungkiri dan bahkan sejarah tidak pernah bisa dihapus peran besar umat Islam pada pembentukan negeri ini.
Para pemodal-pemodal akan takluk di hadapan hartanya umat Islam. Allahu Akbar. Insya Allah jika umat Islam
orang Islam dipimpin oleh orang Islam, yang non Muslim, yang kafir dipimpin oleh mereka. Ba'dhum awliya'u ba'd. Ya, Dan kita nggak boleh terbolak-balik. La tattakhidul kafirina awliya min dunil mu'minin. Jadi umat Islam yang harus dipimpin oleh umat Islam. Jika mau jujur Indonesia adalah mayoritas Muslim dan Anda adalah penganut demokrasi, ya proporsional jika umat Islam yang mayoritas ini dipimpin oleh umat Islam. Bahkan lebih dari itu, ada satuan-satuan terkecil. Umat Islam rela kok kalau pemimpin di Bali itu bukan orang Islam. Ya, karena mayoritas Hindu misalnya. Ya, mestinya tidak ada yang salah jika Aceh kemudian menerapkan perda syariah yang hanya diberlakukan hanya untuk masyarakat Muslim saja.
Tolong ajak ngomong bahasa Jawa,
Ustadz Zain An-Najah often shares the stage with Bahtiar Nasir.
Karena saya mau dengar Ustadz Zaitun berbahasa Jawa saja.
Saya. Oh, apa iki?
Iki ora apa-apa.
Zain is a Muslim preacher and academic who is actively involved in the same organizational network as Bahtiar Nasir, the Council for Young Indonesian Islamic Intellectuals and Scholars, or MIUMI. The MIUMI is an Islamist organization dedicated to the transmission of the thought of the earlier Indonesian Muslim political leaders like Muhammad Nasir. In the early years of national independence, Nasir demanded that Indonesia be transformed into an Islamic state.
Jadi di situ saya nggak bicara politik, bicara kekuasaan beda, Pak.
Enggak, kali ini saya mendukung. Berarti kita harus menang politik umat Islam ini.
Iya jelas.
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar.
Dan insya Allah menang.
Zain explained why Muslims must reject infidel leaders.
Diprediksi kalau pemimpin kafir itu kan dalam pandangan Islam orang kafir itu kan tidak amanat. Dalam pandangan Islam sekali lagi ya. Kenapa nggak amanat? Karena dia nggak mau bersyukur kepada Sang Pencipta Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Dia menciptakan orang ini. Mestinya kan bersyukur kepada Sang Pencipta, ya, membalas budi baiknya karena sudah diberikan rezeki, diberikan kehidupan. Syukurnya itu dalam bentuk menyembahnya, masuk Islam, menyembah sholat 5 waktu dan seterusnya. Berarti kalau orang kafir itu orang yang tidak bersyukur terhadap Tuhannya, tidak amanat terhadap nikmat yang diberikan kepadanya. Nah, kalau dia tidak amanat dengan Tuhannya, biasanya juga nggak amanat sama rakyatnya. Kan sederhana banget ya, itu dari pandangan agama Islam.
However, in Indonesian history, the aspiration for the establishment of an Islamic state has never been the only or dominant force in Muslim circles. Today, mainstream Muslim organizations accept that the present form of the Indonesian nation state, with its religiously inclusive citizenship, is entirely consistent with the highest ideals of Islamic politics. As the narrative of rejecting infidel leaders has gotten stronger in recent years, Nahdlatul Ulama, or NU, the largest Muslim organization in Indonesia, sought to intervene in the national debate with what it regarded as a correction. The term infidel became one of the topics of the national meetings of the NU clerics in January 2019 in West Java.
Dengan bacaan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim dinyatakan dibuka.
One of the results of the national meetings of NU clerics was the recommendation that the term infidel or kafir should never be used to refer to fellow citizens in the context of state life, because both Muslims and non-Muslims have equal citizen rights under the Indonesian Constitution.
Jadi non-Muslim termasuk dalam negara bangsa Indonesia tidak dimasukkan sebagai kafir harbi, kafir mu'ahad, kafir dhimmi, dan kafir musta'man. Tapi istilah yang coba diintroduksi adalah mereka warga negara yang disebut dengan muwatinun.
Islam has had an important position within Indonesia's political landscape. Indeed, even since the establishment of the Republic, on many occasions Indonesia's founding President Sukarno alluded to Islam in his speech.
Dan kepercayaan kepada Tuhan yang satu inilah, tauhid inilah yang menjadi api yang berkobar-kobar menyala-nyala di dalam Quran itu. Dan jikalau api ini telah berkobar-kobar dan menyala-nyala pula di dalam dadanya seseorang manusia, manusia yang demikian itu menjadi manusia yang sebagai dikatakan oleh Allah.
Since Muslims made up the majority of the population, the question of the place of Islam in the constitution and legislation became a central issue in the crafting of the new national ideology. Some of Indonesia's Muslim founders called for the establishment of an Islamic state. The Preparatory Committee for Indonesian Independence, or PPKI, fiercely debated this issue in the weeks leading up to the Declaration of Independence on August 17, 1945. The fierce debate took place over what was known as the Jakarta Charter, a passage located in the preamble of the 1945 Constitution. The debate centered on the following words: "The state is based on belief in the one and only God, with the obligation to implement Islamic law for adherents of Islam." The Jakarta Charter was considered an expression of the ideal of an Islamic state. Although the majority of PPKI members were Muslims, they realized that non-Muslim citizens were significant and had to be recognized. Kiai Wahid Hashim, a PPKI member from Nahdlatul Ulama, was among the figures who agreed with the proposal to remove the 7 words of the Jakarta Charter. In the eyes of the young NU intellectual Ahmad Suwaidi, the attitude of Kiai Wahid Hashim was a reflection of NU's inclusive Islamic ideology.
Jadi misalnya dalam perdebatan di awal-awal kemerdekaan pasca PPKI itu memang ada munculnya berbagai ide bentuk negara Islam itu seperti apa. Ada yang mengusulkan kerajaan Islam, raja ya berarti, ada yang republik, ada yang negara Islam, ada yang negara sekuler, yang kemudian Soekarno menawarkan Pancasila. Tetapi Pancasilanya yang bagaimana? Jadi Wahid Hashim dengan terbuka, dengan ikhlas gitu kira-kira, itu dengan menghapus itu dengan pertimbangan kesatuan Republik Indonesia karena waktu itu terancam pecah. Yang kemudian juga dari perwakilan Muhammadiyah gitu.
Nah, siapa yang mufakat saya minta berdiri. Terima kasih.
Besides NU, the large Muslim organization Muhammadiyah also had a representative in PPKI, namely Ki Bagus Hadikusumo. At first, Ki Bagus was also among figures who promoted the original independence document, which included the Jakarta Charter. However, after the agreement on August 18, 1945, Muhammadiyah agreed with the removal of the Jakarta Charter. Religiously speaking, Muhammadiyah framed its acceptance towards the existing political system through the Islamic concept of Darul Ahdi wa Shahadah, or a country based not on the formal principles of Islamic law as such, but on the Islamic ideals of mutual agreement and testimony. Najib Burhani, a young Muhammadiyah intellectual, notes that the concept accepted by the Muhammadiyah amounted to acknowledging that Indonesia's state form is consistent with the substance of the command to implement the spirit, if not the full form of Sharia, as the Prophet Muhammad did early in his career, not by implementing Islamic law as such, but by building a multicultural and multi-religious state, as was enshrined in the Medina Charter.
Ki Bagus Hadikusumo dan Kasman Singodimedjo adalah orang-orang yang terlibat langsung dalam perumusan sila-sila dari Pancasila, ideologi dari bangsa Indonesia. Dan mereka yang bisa menerima penghapusan 7 kata dari Piagam Jakarta sehingga Pancasila berbentuknya seperti sekarang ini. Itu sama seperti Piagam Madinah. Apa yang disepakati bersama itu adalah bagian yang harus diikuti kayak gitu. Makna syahadah itu adalah bahwa Indonesia itu bisa menjadi negara Islami atau menjadi negara yang non-Islamik tergantung kepada kita. Bagaimana kemudian kita mengisinya. Jadi konsep tentang Darul Harb dan Darul Islam itu sudah usang. Yang dikembangkan itu adalah bahwa Indonesia itu adalah Darussalam, negara yang damai sebagai bentuk daripada perjanjian daripada penduduknya dan tempat kita untuk membuktikan amal-amal terbaik atau karya-karya terbaik dari diri kita kepada bangsa ini.
Maumere, a city in Sika region, East Nusa Tenggara. Maumere is another face of Indonesia. Here, Muslims live as a minority among a Catholic majority population. Maumere offers a visual reminder that not all Indonesian regions are Muslim majority. Always been one of the reasons that the idea of turning Indonesia into an Islamic state has been considered inappropriate. Sunday is the time for worship for most of Maumore's residents, the majority of whom are Catholic. Among Christians going to church this Sunday morning, we find Abdul Rashid, who visits the church to exchange greetings with parishioners in a gesture of silaturahmi, or visiting for friendship and mutual understanding. Abdul Rashid Wahab, familiarly called Abah Rashid, also frequently visits the Manggarai Bishop, Monsignor Edwaldus Martinus Sedu. Abah Rashid is also active in the government-sponsored Forum for Interreligious Harmony, or FKUB. The forum plays an important role in maintaining cordial interreligious relations. In this regard, the far-sightedness and wisdom of Indonesia's founders in making the Pancasila rather than Islamic law the ethical basis of the state found their relevance. In Maumere, the term infidel is not used in interreligious interactions.
Waktu itu secara spontan saya tanya sama Romo Pigjen itu sebagai ketua FKUB, Romo, saya dengar orang Sika dulu, artinya orang Katolik yang di Sika ini, menyebut mereka yang di sebelah timur ini, Iwang baru Gentiu. Gentiu. Ya, saya tanya sama Romo, Gentiu itu apa? Itu pada bahasa Portugis. Orang yang belum beragama dan juga animisme, itu Romo jelaskan begitu. Itu disebut Gentiu. Nah, Gentiu itu sama dengan kafir. Ya saya hanya bilang, saya tidak mungkin menyebut pater ini Gentiu. Ya.
Hanya Indonesia kita bisa melaksanakan amal Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah besar-besaran secara aman.
Years ago, the 22nd of October was declared National Santri Day. It's a day celebrating the large number of Indonesians who study in and graduate from traditional Islamic boarding schools. Most of NU's followers celebrate the day, since many in the NU community are themselves graduates of Indonesia's 50,000 Islamic boarding schools. This celebration has provided momentum for NU and other Indonesian santris to show their commitment to the inclusive Pancasila political system and their rejection of proposals for the establishment of a khilafah or Islamic state.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Merdeka! Merdeka! Mending NKRI! Mending NKRI! Isinya Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah. Daripada kelihatannya negara Islam, isinya menentang Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah.
NU Santris reject the practice of some conservative Islamists of using the Muslim affirmation of God's oneness, or Tauhid, as a motto for their campaign in support of an Islamic state or khilafah.
Muhammadur Rasulullah.
The writing of Tauhid is frequently used in the flag of Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, or HTI, an Islamic mass organization that promulgates the concept of Khilafah. HTI's campaign for an Islamic state condemns democracy as un-Islamic and takes exception to the idea that the current Pancasila-based form of government in Indonesia is the final form of democratic systems and the form of the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia. The NU youth organization known as Banser has frequently been involved in confrontations with HTI and other supporters of the Khilafah campaign for an Islamic state. NU's support of Indonesian nationhood is not a recent development, but has been a trademark of the organization since its establishment by the organization's two revered founders, Kiai Wahab Hasbullah and Kiai Hashim Ash'ari, in 1926. Religion and nationalism have never been seen in contradictory terms in NU circles.
Karena NU sejak awal itu sebenarnya tidak mempermasalahkan Islam dan nasionalisme. Naskah yang saya temukan misalnya 1916 itu adalah syair Yalal Waton yang dikarang oleh salah satu pendiri Nahdlatul Ulama yaitu Kiai Haji Wahab Hasbullah. Itu adalah penanaman tentang nasionalisme melawan penjajah. Di dalam Yalal Waton yang pada dasarnya diangkat dari sebuah hadis Hubbul Waton Minal Iman, itu tidak ada kata Muslim Islam di situ. Jadi kita bisa mengatakan bahwa apa yang dibayangkan oleh Waton atau bangsa itu adalah bangsa Indonesia, gitu, bangsa yang ada di atas batas Hindia Belanda. Jadi tidak membayangkan bahwa ini ada Islam, ini ada ini.
What Ahmad Suwaidi means by Yalal Waton song can be seen in the following song, which is often sung with enthusiasm at NU meetings. In recent times, this song has become a favorite at NU meetings. It was composed by NU founder Kiai Wahab Hasbullah in 1935. Yalal Waton song celebrates the spirit of NU members, encouraging them to follow NU clerics' principles that Islam and nationalism, or love for the homeland, cannot be separated. When the concept of Khilafah first became controversial, some Islamic leaders sought to propose other terms, but ones that affirmed the same spirit of Islamic supremacy.
Jangan sampai kita ini, jadi kita itu nggak ekstrem kiri dan ekstrem kanan, maksudnya begini, ini pertengahan. Ekstrem kanan itu yang hanya Arab semuanya, tidak melihat Indonesia. Yang ekstrem kiri itu Indonesia semuanya, nggak mau lihat Arab, benci sama Arab. Lah kita ini gabungan, kita ini juga merangkul Arab dan merangkul Indonesia. Makanya kita senang dengan
Both
nama
Ustadz Zain and Bahtiar Nasir reject the claim that Islamic politics is only associated with the goal of establishing an Islamic state or Khilafah. According to Ustadz Zain, the issue of Khilafah emerges because the role of Muslims remain weak. But commitment to Islamic supremacy can take other forms than the Khilafah, ones that need not require the replacement of the entire state system.
sejarah itu membuktikan sistem itu tidak baku. Lah khilafah yang ada itu kan kerajaan. Ya kalau sistem kerajaan ya sama dengan sistem khilafah. Sistem republik juga sama dengan sistem khilafah. Hanya itu hanya nama. Kita jangan terjebak dengan istilah khilafah. Yang penting Islam itu tegak, mau namanya NKRI bersyariah juga boleh. Ya. Maunya negara baldatun thayyibatun warabun juga boleh, itu sudah disepakati orang Indonesia. Kalau kita mudah-mudahan Indonesia menjadi negara baldatun thayyibatun warabun ghafur, amin, semua yang mengamini. Itu sama sistemnya dengan khilafah sebenarnya. Jadi kita jangan terjebak dengan istilah. Nah, orang-orang sekarang ribut karena istilah kan itu. Saya kira itu aja.
For Ustaz Zain, the term khilafah may just be a terminology issue. However, the dream of achieving Islamic supremacy, even within the framework of a democratic political order, remains a core ambition of his movement.
Jadi dalam sistem demokrasi ini permasalahannya, demokrasi yang diterapkan di Indonesia demokrasi yang mahal banget. Setiap calon pemimpin harus punya dana sekian miliar, sekian triliun. Ya. Dari mana dananya? Calon itu nggak punya uang, dananya dari orang-orang yang kaya ini. Kita tahu sendiri, kalau orang itu terjerat dengan dana, artinya dia didukung dengan dana dari seseorang, otomatis dia tersandera. Jadi ketika memimpin pasti ada namanya politik balas budi. Tidak kayak ada lingkaran setan. Karena saya bayangkan yang memimpin di Indonesia itu akhirnya adalah bukan pemimpin itu, tapi yang memimpin adalah orang yang memberikan dana. Dan itu sudah kelihatan. Nah sekarang ada ide atau ada usulan supaya nanti yang memberikan dana itu umat Islam. Bisa kok umat Islam itu iuran 1 juta kalikan berapa penduduk. Itu udah miliaran triliunan kan. Itu kalau bisa mengusung satu pemimpin yang didanai oleh umat Islam selesai. Jadi dia tidak berhutang budi kepada salah satu konglomerat, tapi berhutang budi kepada umat Islam, kepada rakyat.
The influence of formalistic politics and the idea of Islamic supremacy was seen graphically in the contestation of 2019 general election. Through the Ijtima Ulama Forum, groups and figures carrying Islamic supremacy like FPI, GNPF Ulama, Ikhwanul Muslimin, FUI, HTI, and Salafi political groups support Prabowo Sandi. At the same time, the mainstream within NU gave its support to President Joko Widodo. Meanwhile, the Muhammadiyah electorate was divided between two poles. Resulting political mobilization reinforced a pattern of ideological polarization, comparable in some ways to that seen during the days of the fierce ideological contestation in the 1950s. However, this time the polarization did not pit Muslims against non-Muslims and the left, but NU and other Muslim and non-Muslim supporters of Pancasila inclusivity against the proponents of Islamic supremacy. The opposition might be described as inclusive and multi-religious Muslim politics against an exclusive and variety of politics. His name is Ahmad Muwafiq, but he is well known as Gus Muwafiq. An NU cleric who is recently famous.
Oh, bagai palsu. Ya Allah, mereknya Penti di sini, oh. Di sini gitu.
His house in Sleman, in the northern section of Yogyakarta, has always welcomed many guests. His guests include people from an NU background, but also non-Muslims, state officials, and other people from across Indonesian society in general. Although they come from various backgrounds, the topic of discussion during their visits with Gus Muwafiq remains the same, namely the role of Islam and Muslims in the context of Indonesian nationalism.
Bersama namanya dhimmi. Kalau sudah saling bertanggung jawab namanya ra'iyah. Maka dengan sebutan ra'iyah tidak boleh lagi diturunkan ke derajat kafir. Makanya ulama
Gus Muwafiq travels around Indonesia, spreading the message that the character of Islam in Indonesia is not compatible with extremist ideologies like those promoting Islam supremacy or linked to the idea of an Islamic state or khilafah.
Dan yang berkhianat pada khilafah siapa? Saudi. Nah, masuk ke sini bercerita tentang khilafah. Padahal Islam di sini tidak terhubung dengan khilafah. Dengan Turki nggak terhubung. Buktinya apa? Bangsa ini diserang sama Portugis, nggak ada yang bela. Makanya para raja itu gelarnya Senopati Engaloko. Nggak ada yang bela. 1515 Malaka diserang sama Portugis, apa Khalifah turun ke sini? Enggak juga. Dihajar sama Belanda, enggak turun ke sini. Sampai bangsa sini menghasilkan trial and error, ya kan? Berlatih bagaimana membangun. Hasilnya yang di sana satu bangsa menjadi beberapa negara, nah kita malah yang puluhan bangsa jadi satu negara. Itu jadi makanya kalau sekarang mereka berbicara tentang khilafah, pantas. Karena mereka dulu dilindungi oleh khilafah. Jadi begitu mereka remuk 5 tahun lah, 10 tahun membayangkan lagi tentang khilafah. Lah kita, ya kita nggak bayangin itulah, wong kita udah lewati itu.
Kiai Muwafiq is an example of the growing consolidation of an Islam in Indonesia that is inclusive and multi-religious in its form. A movement that has emerged in response to the ascendance in some circles of Islamic supremacy.
Jadi dulu itu ada bahasa yang paling bagus itu dari Mbah Hamid Kajoran, itu bahasanya bagus. Pancasila itu milik kita, milik umat Islam, dipinjam oleh negara, terus dikembalikan lagi kepada umat Islam waktu itu. Kenapa ya? Ketuhanan yang Maha Esa itu apa? Bukan qul huwallahu ahad. Kan itu. Kemanusiaan itu apa? Bukan keislaman. Persatuan, permusyawaratan. Apalagi yang keempat itu bahasanya aja bahasa Arab. Kerakyatan, ro'iyah. Yang dimiliki hikmah, bahasa Arab. Permusyawaratan, bahasa Arab. Perwakilan al-wakil bahasa Arab. Loh, Islam semua. Keadilan al-adlu bahasa Arab. Dan bangsa kita ini unik. Uniknya apa? Uniknya kita ini menjadi bangsa yang punya kemustahilan. Apa kemustahilannya? Mampu membentuk satu negara di atas puluhan bangsa. Eropa satu bangsa dipikul puluhan negara, Arab satu bangsa dipikul puluhan negara. Kita ini puluhan bangsa jadi satu negara kesatuan Republik Indonesia.
Within the NU circle, this consolidation has reinvigorated the commitment to Pancasila, first affirmed during the national meeting of Nahdlatul Ulama clerics in Situbondo in 1983. With some 80 million members or sympathizers, Nahdlatul Ulama has become an organizational pillar in the effort to preserve an inclusive Islam and a multi-religious Indonesia. The commitment to Pancasila has also been reaffirmed by the second largest Islamic mass organization in Indonesia, Muhammadiyah, during the Tanwir meeting in Bengkulu in February 2019. Muhammadiyah is the second largest Islamic mass organization in Indonesia after Nahdlatul Ulama. The number of its members and sympathizers reach 40 million people. Moderate Muslim figures worry that the strengthening of Islamic supremacy narratives will trigger communal conflicts. Indonesia has experienced severe communal conflicts triggered by interpretations of religious traditions that are exclusive in character. An example happened in Maumere in 1995 and again in 2002. Maumere was rocked by riots pitting Muslims against Catholics. Abah Rashid worked tirelessly to bring the conflict to a halt.
Kalau saya di minoritas, saya juga memahami keminoritasan saya. Jadi tidak menuntut yang berlebih-lebih ya. Sampai kalau demo segala macam. Kita diskusi pelan-pelan dengan uskup, dengan siapa saja. Jadi untuk yang paling penting memahami potensi, lalu bisa berbagi.
Satu, Allah Tuhanku, dua, Muhammad Nabiku, tiga, Al-Quran kitabku, 1, 2, 3, Islam agamaku.
Abah Rashid is a Muhammadiyah figure who tenaciously works for one of Muhammadiyah's community services, in particular education, from elementary school to college. Abah Rashid has dedicated his life to building educational institutions in which some of the teachers and students are Catholic. Maumere young generations internalize the message of inclusive Islam that Abah Rashid disseminates. Without differentiating faith and appearance, they enjoy a friendly discussion. At the age of 81, Abah Rashid is not tired of traveling around Maumere, visiting remote islands, preaching to Muslims, and visiting non-Muslim communities.
Memang kita bersilaturahmi, sila, sudah hubungan yang erat, rahmi kasih sayang, untuk merajut temali hati sesama kita, untuk mewujudkan ukhuwah, persaudaraan. Jadi proses untuk suatu silaturahmi yang sempurna, ya tidak hanya sampai ta'aruf saja. Ya kan mesti dari mana, siapa, bagaimana, itu kan mesti perkenalan.
When the sentiment of identity politics arises, efforts for preventing communal conflicts potentials not only depend on the grand narratives at the national level, but also on the role of local figures in defending the spirit of inclusion and tolerance. In Maumere, Abah Rashid plays just this role. He has pioneered initiatives for interreligious engagement by building an educational institution and Islamic humanity, which are inclusive of all Indonesians, non-Muslim as well as Muslim. Figures like Abah Rashid and the Muslim minority in Maumere are yet another of the many phases of Islam in Indonesia. At the same time, however, calls for Islamic supremacy have not ended. Cultural clerics like Gus Muafik keep traveling around Indonesia, consolidating their roles as defenders of a multi-religious Indonesia and an inclusive Islam. This much is certain. There are many faces of Islam in Indonesia, and the Muslim community as a whole will continue to develop within a context shaped by rival narratives of nationalism and citizenship. Indonesia is unfinished.